Hi, I'm Alex from the Southern Ukulele Store. Today we're going to talk about Oli Ukuleles. Very few brands have come along in the last 10 years that have had more of an instant buzz and attraction to them in the same way as Oli Ukuleles. The product of Ukulele Site, a very, very well known, like world famous ukulele shop in Oahu. Arguably the most important ukulele shop in the world because they have Corey and Calais, arguably the two best ukulele players in the world, demoing instruments and talking about them every single week on a podcast that has been very important in our community for a very, very long time. But the Oli ukuleles to me were something that from day one I was watching with a keen interest, wondering where that was going. Was it going to be something that remained exclusive to the ukulele site, or was it going to be something that could grow? Quite often something cool can happen. Good example being the Big Island Uli range, but it's impossible to make it on a scale where other dealers can get involved and people around the world can play them. But that is not the case with Oli. Oli is something that is growing, and I'm very proud that Southern Ukulele Store is one of the first dealers in the world to have them. The week before the NAMM show, I spent some time with Andrew Katakis and the team at Oli and the ukulele site, and I got a chance to try pretty much every single model in the range, and we put a plan in place so that I could get them here to Bournemouth in England, and we could be a fully fledged Oli dealer. I did have some apprehension that perhaps some of these ukuleles were going to just be Pono ukuleles with some lipstick, meaning kind of fancy looking Pono ukuleles. And Pono is a brand that has been very important to Southern Ukulele Store, but in the last 4 to 5 years have kind of naturally just moved in different directions away from. The Oli ukuleles, I believe, well, they're made in the Isle of Java in Indonesia. They're made in a facility similar, if not the same facility as the old Pono Pro Classic range. And those ukuleles were fantastic. But my misgivings, my worries, the moment I held one and I noted that the weight of these ukuleles was half the weight of the Pono ukuleles. And yes, the bindings were good, but the neck shape was different and the nut width was wider and the tuners were better. And the bracing underneath was different, and they had side sound ports, and some of them came in hard cases. I started to realize that actually, at what point does something remind you of something else, and at what point does it become something completely different? So I'm proudly going to be flying the flag for Oli from this point onward, because I think that my interest is putting the best ukulele at a certain price in people's hands, and the excitement that I get from some of these Oli ukuleles and the excitement we had at our event last weekend where we showed them off for the first time. It's the first time I felt that excitement since a Nui Nui launched the Moonbird. Now, the range of Oli ukuleles is quite large, and I can only really put a finger to the wind and see what I think people would be most interested in and what I felt most impressed by. I really liked the X series Mahogany ukuleles, so we've got some of those. The L1 series Mango ukuleles, so we've got some of those. And the L2s, which are the kind of third tier of Oli. I took what I could get because basically all 8 of the ukuleles I was shown at NAMM, I would have taken them all, but they are made in such limited numbers that actually it's kind of ones at a time. So I took the ones I could get, and I'm going to show you them last today. We're going to start with the X series Mahogany ukuleles. I've got a concert and a baritone to show you. That was a long intro. Thank you for bearing with me. The first Oli ukulele we're going to look at ever actually in store is this, the XCMHS. The X series is the first tier of Oli ukuleles. This is that kind of step up from a beginner's ukulele to something more serious. This is the one that most closely reminded me of the Pono ukuleles, but I will just run through the spec, and I'm just going to give you an honest assessment of where I feel they differ as I go. The X series has traditional X bracing, which is what's the most familiar in the ukulele world. It's something that we've seen time and time again, and it's tried and tested, and it works. This has a solid mahogany body, all out, with a satin finish. And the way the coding works on Oli's, this is the X-CMHS. The S stands for Satin, so you've got the X series, C for concert, MH for mahogany, S for satin. So you can apply that to pretty much any of the codes and get an understanding straight away of what they are. But the top on this is very, very thin. You can actually kind of feel the bracing as you work your way through it. But it's nice and stiff, it's resonant. These ukuleles come with a side sound port, the satin finish throughout with a mahogany neck, which is quite a nice wide C shape with a rosewood fingerboard and bridge and a 37mm nut width. Yeah, this one has a radius to it as well. The side dots are not side dots at all. They are tiny block inlays that start on the fingerboard and curl around to the neck. So very, very good. If you're a right-handed player, crap for me, but if you're a right-handed player, you look down and really it's impossible not to just see at a glance where you are on the neck, which is a great move. It's something that companies like Flight have been doing for a long time, and it's really good to see Oli are incorporating some of the more modern aesthetic details on their ukuleles. You have a front rosewood binding with a rope binding on the front, giving it more of a traditional look, and then you've got the rosewood rosette as well. The rosewood isn't Indian rosewood, it's Indonesian rosewood, which is the same makeup of wood, but I believe the wood is farm grown rosewood. I did some research on it because I'd never heard the term Indonesian rosewood before, but actually it's quite common in instrument manufacturing now, with rosewood not being as abundant and kind of being harder to move from place to place. This Indonesian rosewood is a good compromise, really, if you're looking at getting something with those kind of details. That side sound port is also bound. You've got heel cap there, and it's a string through bridge on this model. The baritone is much the same. You have here the same spec. The baritone shape on an Oli is much more slender and tenor guitar-like than the modern Flight or Kala Contour ukuleles, and it produces a much tighter sound. I think the body is the reason for that. This is much more like a vintage Martin in shape. You've got the same spec on this though, with those side-mounted dots, solid mahogany body and satin finish. The only other thing we need to mention are the tuners. All of these ukuleles have black Goto planetary tuners, which are a geared friction tuner. A traditional tuner might have like a 24 or an 18:1 ratio, which means you've got to turn it 18 times to get the post to go all the way around. The turn ratio on these tuners is much shorter, I guess you'd say. So it's a 4:1 ratio. So actually, they turn and respond much quicker, and they are quite sensitive. It takes about 5 minutes to get used to, but they are geared and they hold their tuning when they're there. Finally, the strings we'll talk about, because I never mention strings in the videos and it's important to people. They are Kulau fluorocarbon strings. So the house brand of Kulau, Andrew Katakis' brother Noah. So they are a clear fluorocarbon string. They're quite nice and soft tension on the concert. On the baritone, slightly tighter tension with a bronze wound or probably a gold alloy wound D, and then a silver wound G. So a really good choice of string set for these. Something I liked enough actually that I'm immediately ordering these strings because I think other people will like to try them too. That's the X series though. Let's give the let me do it again. Let me do the X CMHS and the X BMHS. Let's give them both a play and see what you think. Let's move on now to the L1 series, which I think is going to be long-term the most important series in this Oli range of ukuleles. I've got the trio of Mango Satin ukuleles here and the trio of gloss ukuleles. We're going to talk about the Satin first. This is the L2-TMG, which stands for lattice. That's important. We'll talk about that in a sec. T for tenor, MGS. But I also have the Baritone, the L1-BMGS, and the concert, the L1-CMGS. Let's talk about how this differs from the X series. This is about 20 to 30% more in price, but what you get for that is the lattice bracing. Lattice bracing is a kind of crossed trestle bracing underneath the top, which makes the top stiffer. It also takes some of the weight away from a ukulele. I find a lot of X-braced ukuleles can feel quite heavy up here. What happens with this L1 shape is that suddenly this feels nothing like anything else I've got in the shop right now. It feels very, very light, very, very resonant. Just actually talking next to it, I can hear myself coming in the sound port and my noise coming out the sound hole. The ukulele itself is all solid mango. The L1 series typically has no front or back binding, but it does have the same Indian rosewood, the same Indonesian rosewood sound hole rosette. You have a rosewood fingerboard and bridge. This is a tie-on bridge on the L1 series. You've still got those side mini block inlays that curve over the fingerboard with a kind of bound fingerboard edge. You still have the wider nut width, which is 37mm, with the Goto planetary tuners. And the L1s don't have the fancy headstocks you may have seen in some promotional photos. The L1s have a more simple headstock design, but they do still have the side port and they come in a pod case. String wise, I've noticed that the concerts are all coming high G with that Ukulele fluorocarbon. The tenors have a low G, which is the Ukulele fluorocarbon with a golden alloy Fremont Soloist style low G. And then the baritone has the fluorocarbon trebles with the gold alloy D and the aluminium wound G. The L1 series it's ticking a box that very few things at that price are. I would say the best competition for this ukulele would be a Rebel or an L2-TMG. Both of those ukuleles really punch above their weight. And I can see a lot of people coming in maybe looking for a Hawaiian ukulele in the months to come that look at an L1, try an L1 and think, wow, this is definitely for me. So let's give the whole series of Satin ukuleles a play. The L1-CMGS, the L1-TMGS and the L1-BMGS. Let's give them a play and see what you think. You guys don't mind if I make the odd mistake, I know. Still going. This is where things start to get really interesting. The satin finished ukuleles definitely have their place, rooted in tradition, but I find more people are drawn to the look and the sound of a gloss finish, and that's where these come in. This is the L2-TMG Concert, L2-TMG Tenor, and the L2-BMG Baritone. In time, I'm sure we'll have a soprano version of these as well, but for now we've got the concert, tenor and baritone to compare. But the spec is the same for all of these except for the size and scale. So the L2-TMG, meaning lattice concert mango, has a gloss finish. The wood just absolutely pops under it. I believe it's a polyurethane finish. It feels very light and glass-like on first impressions. The spec of this is similar to the satin finish ukuleles we've just looked at. You have a solid mango body, top, back and sides, with a side sound port bound in rosewood, a rosewood rosette, rosewood fingerboard and bridge with those side mounted inlays so you can see what you're doing when you look down. You have a 37mm nut width here with a nice round C shape. The neck shape of these feels just ever so slightly mirrored to the radius on the fingerboard. So the fingerboard edges curve slightly back in on you as you play, which I personally find very, very comfortable. It's more like a kind of modern high-end acoustic guitar approach to the neck shape here. The string spacing's nice and wide on all of these as well. It doesn't feel compact in any way. You have the Goto planetary tuners with the Oli logo inlaid there, I believe in maple, with a rosewood faceplate. The Goto planetary tuners really work on the smaller models, and it's the first time I've ever seen a baritone really successfully use them as well. As a result, the bigger these ukuleles get, they don't really feel heavier. Normally baritones can feel almost kind of top heavy at the headstock, but I don't get a sense of that with any of these that I've tried so far. In fact, I would say actually, when it comes to the gloss finishes, the baritones have been kind of out there on their own. I'm trying to think of things we've done previously in a baritone size that bridge the gap. You may have noticed if you're ever searching for ukuleles, even aspirationally, just like, oh, I'll have a little Google. There's very little to choose from after £600. You've got some choices up to £600, and then it seems to jump to something like a kanile'a or a Hana Custom or a Kamaka at £2,000 plus. This is the first thing that's come along that's really bridged that gap, and I feel like quality-wise, they're much closer to those things at £2,000, and that sounds very salesy, but I can only give you my honest feedback. These aren't going to be for everybody, because actually where they have these lattice braced tops, they don't have quite as warm a sound as a traditional X-braced instrument might have. Instead, they're quite they've got quite a lot of attack. They project really fast and confidently and cleanly. They sound very, very modern. They don't have the kind of natural soul of, say, like an old Martin mahogany ukulele. They actually have more of a modern kind of country folk vibe to them when you play them. Part of that might be the side sound port. When I play these upside down, I think they sound, you know, fantastic. But when I heard Romeo play one of these this way around yesterday, as we were unboxing them, I just felt completely drawn to stop what I was doing and listen to it, which is the biggest compliment you can give an instrument. Let's give the L1 Gloss series a play. The L2-TMG, the L2-TMG, and the L2-BMG. Let's give them a play and see what you think. Take 3. Okay, I don't really know where to start with this next series. The L2 series ukuleles are the third tier of Oli ukuleles. They are different to the ukes that have come before. They are made with the idea that, you know, what custom ukulele can we build here? And they're done in short runs. Sometimes they are one-offs. And the L2 series do have some upgrades that we can just quickly talk about and then elaborate on. So the L1 series are rosewood fingerboards and bridges. The L2 series have been upgraded to ebony, which is a harder wood, which fingerstyle players typically like because it has more attack to it. The L2 series ukuleles typically have some kind of headstock upgrade. So whether that's some kind of tribal inlay or some kind of foliage related inlay, something themed to the wood or the instrument. They come in hard cases, a really plush, very premium Oahu hard case. And I think the limited kind of element of it and the tiny upgrades there that are important to certain players make the L2 series very, very exciting. You've probably seen more of the L2 series ukuleles if you've heard of Oli before. Let's start with the L2-TMG because it's the most simple upgrade from what we've had just previously. The L1 series didn't have the binding. The L2 Mango has front and back binding. It still has the side port. I mentioned the ebony fingerboard and bridge, but what I forgot to mention a moment ago is this beveled armrest. So a player playing for a long time, somebody who really is going to sit and bond with their ukulele for thousands of hours over many years, they may prefer to pay that extra 20-30% for these features mentioned. The binding definitely adds something to the look, as does the back stripe here. But play-wise and feel-wise, I think they are fairly similar. You still have the radiused fingerboard here with the 37mm nut width, those Goto planetary tuners, but I'm going to try and do a big reveal now. But the L2-TMG also has this mango inlay, which is dyed woods. You can't fake that. That's just a time-consuming process. And it's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. The ebony fingerboard and bridge still has those side inlays for the player as they look down. It's a satin neck, gloss body. There's nothing not to like. I'm going to talk about this other ukulele next, but for now, let's give the L2-TMG a play and see what you think. Oh, it's so warm. Okay. Okay, this ukulele absolutely suckered me in at the NAMM show this year. Really, really loved it. Couldn't wait to get one of these back home for the store. This is the L2-TSFM SB. Let me unpack that code for you. So you have L2 for Lattice Series 2, lattice bracing. You have TSFM, which stands for the tenor spruce flamed maple. Now this is big leaf North American flamed maple. I imagine that means it's Canadian maple. Really lovely figuring to it. There's maple trim throughout this ukulele as well, with an Engelmann spruce top. So a nice tight grain spruce top, really projecting loud with the maple back and sides, gives it a kind of loud but soft character. And then finally you have this very light tobacco sunburst. There's just a lot of things to look at on this ukulele. You've still got that dark wood rosette with an ebony fingerboard and bridge. You've got a maple beveled armrest, which has been unstained. Great choice. Love the look of that. Even from a distance in the shop, that one has drawn me in. The sides on this ukulele are pretty. It's got the seam there at the bottom as well in maple, as well as the back stripe. You have a satin neck, which has also been sunburst, so that matches everything. If you think of those singer ukuleles that a Nui have done, this is akin to that, similar price point, a similar quality of ukulele, but if anything has slightly more kind of deluxe appointments to it. The Nui ukuleles have more of a, they're very, very clean, very, very crisp. The maple gives this some character. The block inlays, those mini block inlays on the side, they are done in a black wood on this ukulele, contrasting against the maple binding on the fingerboard. And it's got Goto planetary tuners. We didn't even talk about the tribal motif. The motif on the front here is awesome. It looks like the traditional kind of Maui style tattoos that you see people have etched into them with a hammer. Think The Rock Dwayne Johnson. In fact, should we call this the Rock ukulele? It's just very cool, isn't it? And I feel like this is a ukulele that has a life of its own independent of the rest of the brand, which is a massive compliment in itself. Let's give the L2-TMG SB a play and see what you think. Okay, I did have one special L1 that I didn't mention before now. I wanted to show off some L2s first, but if you're still here, I'm going to reward you now. This is my favourite ukulele from the NAMM show. We brought it back with us. This is the L1, it's got a great, really long code, L1 SP BMG BK. But I can unpack that for you. L1, because it's an L1 spec ukulele, still has the lattice bracing. SP, because it's a special edition model. B for baritone. MG for mango, because the body on this is all mango. And then the BK, understandably, stands for the black translucent finish we've got here. So the black finish where you can see the wood grain underneath. The trim on this ukulele is a mixture of rosewood on the binding, and you've got the maple rosette there. You've still got the same L1 spec here, so it's a fingerboard. It's still radiused, rosewood spec for the fingerboard and bridge with those block inlays, up to the normal Oli headstock here with the Goto planetary tuners. I only have the one of these. I've got the Baritone Mango one, which was, I didn't have to beg for it. Oh, side sound port as well. I didn't have to beg for it, but I definitely had to say, look, it's important to me that we get this and bring it back. Because the Nui whale ukuleles are fantastic. People love them. The kanile'a Pahaka ukulele is fantastic. There is a theme in the modern ukulele world for a stained black ukulele, but this is half the price of those other aspirational instruments, and I feel like it does the job very, very well. And to have a baritone as well is just a massive bonus. Let's give this L1 SP BMG BK a play and see what you think. Do you guys mind if I play something else on this one? I like that piece. I'll play a bit of it. But it's naturally a much darker instrument. So I kind of want to play something in G, or D rather. I'm going to end today's video by talking about the L2-TCR and the L2-BCR. So that's the Cedar Rosewood model. This is currently the kind of top end model that we have from the Oli line. If you're a fingerstyle player or somebody that has an interest in a ukulele that has more of a classical guitar sound, you're going to love this. There's nothing not to love. It has a cedar top with the Indonesian rosewood back and sides. Really lovely figuring to both of these ukuleles with the rosewood rosette. You've got the beveled armrest here, which is finished in ebony, so it's a contrasting wood to the actual backwood, but hard to get on camera here. You have the side sound port and the ebony fingerboard and bridge with the side mounted inlays. The tenor one has this gorgeous, I can't tell if it's a plant or a bird. I think it's a plant inlay. I should know. It's going to be in the listing, but a really lovely inlaid motif there at the top in the headstock with the Goto planetary tuners. 37mm nut width, just a great ukulele, a really different sounding ukulele to everything else that I've shown you today. I'm going to show you the BCR because the BCR is unique in itself. I got two BCRs on this first shipment. One of them came with turquoise, sort of light blue style binding up the fingerboard and around the body. But they don't have the inlays at the top, so they're a more simple inlay at the top, but it is bound in blue. And the other one I have is exactly the same, but the bindings are done in a darker wood rather than a light color. I guess it's still just a work in progress. You have the cedar top on this with that Indonesian rosewood back and sides. It's the same spec as the tenor I've just showed you. Two final ukuleles at the end of what has been a very, very long morning of filming, just trying to show you as much of this stuff as I can. Let's give the L2-TCR and the L2-BCR a play, and I'll be back to sign you off in a moment. Well, there you have it, folks. I don't even know off the top of my head how many ukes we've looked at today, but it's a lot. It's everything that I could get my hands on for this first delivery. But what did you think? You have that X series if you want something more traditional, something more affordable with more of a jazzy, darker sound to it. We've got the L1 series if you want as many deluxe features as possible, but you want to work to a budget. And then you have the L2 series for those players that just want something really special, made in small numbers that you're just never going to outgrow. I feel like the same could be said of any of these instruments. You're not going to outgrow these Oli ukuleles, and I am so excited for the future stocking them here at Southern Ukulele Store. If you have any questions, please do leave a comment, or you can email me, alex@ukulele.co.uk. You can call the store on 01202 430 820. Please note that my guys, Phil and Romeo, these are very, very new. At the time of filming, they've been here a day. We are learning about them as we go, so I will be tweaking the listings in the days to come, but everything you need to know should be there right now, and there are links in the description. I really look forward to talking about these again in the future, but for now, I'm going to go get another coffee, and I'll see you again very soon.